Don't let me call you down. Hey, listen, get everybody's attention. All right. You know, it does my heart good to see how many people came out here, and I made plenty of phone calls, and it means a lot that y'all thought enough of me to come out here, and it means even more to me that you're going to get to hear from our next governor, Pamela Evette, and after she gets through with it, come on up here, Miss Lieutenant Governor, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
And they are for sale. So anyway.
I love a businessman. I love a business.
Well, and you made the right. I am a businessman, or I try to be. But that's one of the strong reasons we need Pamela Evette as our next governor. She is a business woman. She is not a career politician. This is the first office you've ever held, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And she does a wonderful job. And not that I have experience of knowing many lieutenant governors over the years, but I will tell you from my time in the State House, this lady right here is on the floor of the House and the Senate on a weekly basis at least, I would say. She's in touch with all of your elected officials, whether it be a lowly representative like myself, the higher chamber, the senators. She's in touch with all of them. And we're the ones, the General Assembly, we make it happen. But we do that with we work well with the governor's office and the lieutenant governor's office. And Pamela Evette has been there the whole time. We've made big reform on energy. I think you're all about the tax cuts coming soon when we're in our near future, because I know we're all tax debt to start with. But we've had a lot of wins, the Second Amendment. And she's always been a Donald Trump supporter, which is a win-win in my book all the time. So there's a lot of people I know that's like, well, who's our lieutenant governor? And I try to tell them who our lieutenant governor is and what she's doing. And don't take offense, but she's like a duck. Have you ever seen a duck just gliding across a nice smooth body of water? And it looks like the duck is just lollygagging around, but if you looked up on the water and you saw the little feet of the duck, those things are working just as hard as they can go. And Pamela Evette is a hard-working lieutenant governor, and she has our best interest at heart. And with that, I think we're going to open it up to some, would you like to just give a little spiel here?
Sure, I love that. I do that. Now I'm a mom of three, I could probably yell and you all could hear me. But, well, Cal, thank you so much for having me here. And Cal's been a great friend, and I think it was one of the best things I ever did. You know, when I became lieutenant governor, by the way, I'm your 93rd lieutenant governor. I'm the first female Republican lieutenant governor that our state has ever had, but I'm also the first lieutenant governor ever elected with a governor. And so that was my first time ever entering public office. And it was interesting how that happened. So the governor and I, the governor was the first elected official to endorse President Trump. And I was a big Trump supporter, not because I was in public office, because it mattered. I was a big Trump supporter because I was a business person. I started a business in my house. I grew it into a national company. And I knew, and the one thing I complained about the most is we needed more business people in office. We needed people in office who signed the front of a paycheck, who could balance a budget, who could move the needle, who understood all the problems that business owners had day in and day out. And so when I saw Donald Trump come down that escalator, I was like, this is my guy. Because he was something different, and we needed something different. And I can remember my friends, I don't know how many of you were Trump people from the beginning, but my friends told me I was crazy. They said, he will never win the primaries. Remember, there was like 15 or 16 people in the primaries, and he started out like at 2%. And I said, I just think people want something different. He is going to move the needle. And they said I was crazy. And then we won the primary. And then they said, oh my goodness, he is never going to be able to beat Hillary Clinton. And I said, you just watch, he will beat her. And by God, he did, right? And so I got to know the governor during that time. And then it came time for the governor to pick somebody to run as his lieutenant governor. The governor was a lieutenant governor when President Trump was elected. The governor got pushed up to UN ambassador, so the lieutenant governor became governor. Now Henry was looking for somebody to pick. So I got a call. Funniest story I ever tell. I got a call from the governor, and he said, Pamela, why don't you come on down to Columbia? I want to talk to you. And so I got really excited because I don't know about everybody, but I've never gotten a call from the governor that asked me to come down and talk to him. So I got a little bit excited. So I went to my husband's office and I said, David, the governor just called and wants me to come to Columbia. And he looked at me just as serious as he could be. He said, whatever he asks you, just say no. Because he thought for sure it was going to be like, take another board, get on a commission. At that point, you know, I had 3 kids still at home. My mom, who'll be 97 next month, she lives with me. At that point, my husband's mother was still alive. She lived across the street, and we had this national company who had a lot going on. And so I went down to Columbia, and I was fully prepared. How would you like to be on this business board? I was on the Small Business Regulatory Commission. And so imagine my surprise when he asked me to run as his lieutenant governor. So I said, well, give me a week. I need to go talk to my husband. I need to go talk to our kids, because no matter what you think, when you run an office, it becomes a family affair, right? Whether you want it to or not, you drag them in with you. And so when I got in the car, I called David and I said, David, the governor asked me to run as his lieutenant governor. And he got as quiet as a church mouse. And he said, what did you say? And I said, well, I told him we'd come back in a week and we'd come back together and talk about it. And I'll tell you, it was the best decision I ever made. Because when we sat down with the governor, I said to him, I said, Governor, why me? I'd never held elected office. I never was even like my school class president, right? And he said, because I want a business person. I want somebody with a fresh set of eyes that could come in and be my partner in this. I want you to talk your business lingo with business people all around the state. Because if we're going to grow, we got to figure out what makes businesses happy, what they're afraid of, what we need to fix. And that's what I want you to do. And I said, as long as I can be impactful, because I don't want to be a lieutenant governor who just sits in an office and doesn't do anything. If I'm going to leave my business, I want to do something good. He said, you can do that. So for 7 years, I've traveled around literally the state, meeting with big businesses and small businesses, meeting with parents, meeting with associations, and finding out what we could do good. And I'm honest with people. I probably can't fix every one of your problems, but by God, I can get you to somebody who can fix one of your problems. And that's what I've tried to do. That's what I've enjoyed doing the 7 years. And I'm proud of the legacy the governor and I have. I mean, we have given law enforcement the largest pay raises in South Carolina's history. And they hand that child to you in the hospital, and there's no instruction book, and you don't know what to do, and you're on a wing and a prayer, and you do the best you can. That's how it was when I became lieutenant governor, because my position was different than every other lieutenant governor. And so I sat in my office and thought, okay, what do I do now? And what I did is I went and I made friends, because that's what business people do. If you want to get something done, you start to make friends with the people you have to work with, right? And that's how I met Cal, and that's how I made so many friends in the General Assembly. Is I went and asked them what was important to them, and I wanted to tell them what was important to me. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that have thrown their hat in the ring to be the next governor of South Carolina. And all of them today will claim to be a Trump supporter, and probably Trump's loyalist supporter. But I'm going to tell you, on January 23, President Trump came to the Capitol. And he called looking for support. And out of all those people, I'm the only one that stood by his side. When there were no polls, and it wasn't in my political best interest, when everybody thought he was going to be indicted, because I believe loyalty matters. Amen. And as your next governor, I want to continue a lot of that legacy that the governor and I have worked so hard on. I believe we can eliminate state income tax. If Florida can do it, and Texas and Tennessee, by God, we can too. And how many of you like what the president has done with Doge? Anybody like that? You see, I'm an accountant by trade, and I'm a business person at heart. And I like calling it SCOGE because I think it gives it a little South Carolina flair. But I think we can really leverage technology and leverage AI and become more efficient. Because whether it's in your own homes or in your own businesses, efficiency drives profit to the bottom line. And if you're a government, that means you need less tax dollars. When you need less tax dollars, you can eliminate state income tax easily. And you can do that. I also believe regulations are the hardest part about doing business anywhere. And
It
listen,
absolutely is.
I operated a business in 49 states. It's not just regulations here, it's regulations everywhere. We just need a business person at the helm with the vision of how to get that done. I believe we should sunset all of our regulations and bring them back up in front of the General Assembly and let them decide. We have regulations on the books that came out in 1950. How many of you think those regulations even are applicable today? They're probably not. So let's make the General Assembly relook at those. And if when they were passed, they sounded good, but now we find out it left too much gray area for bureaucrats to have an opinion, then let's lock those down and make them better. Well, let's get input from the business community to find out what's really working and what's not. I believe we still can do it, and we will do it. We will get school choice past the finish line. Because educating our children is not only the right of every parent, it's their responsibility. And that is the best, most efficient way to do it. I sit with lieutenant governors from all over the country. In states that have moved the needle the most in educational outcomes has been through school choice. Because it creates competition. It makes sure that we are doing the best for our children, and we're getting adults out of the way, and we're doing it efficiently. And I believe we will see that. And I believe with me as governor, we will help lead that charge to get it done, right, Cal?
Yes, ma'am.
And we have to stand with our parents. Because if we've seen anything over the years, it's parents getting further and further away from making decisions for their children. I'm a mom first and foremost. I have 3 children. And I can remember when my oldest was 29, was in school, I used to have to write a permission slip to give her a cough drop, to give her an aspirin. And now you can hear in parts of the country where schools don't want to tell parents if their children are having difficulties at school, if they're wanting to change their gender, no matter what this is. Parents need to be involved at every level of anything that's happening in their child's life. Because I will guarantee you, there is nobody on this earth that loves their children, like my children, more than I love them, or your children more than you love them. And so as government, we need to back our parents and not try to get in the way of them raising their children. So there is a lot that needs to be done. I think it's exciting times for South Carolina. I am so proud to be your lieutenant governor. I think South Carolina is the best place to live, work, and raise your children, because that's what I've done here. I've lived here, I've worked here, I've created a business here, and I've raised my children here. But I also believe that our best days could be in front of us. And that's why it's really important how we grow and the culture that we keep here in our state. And I'm proud to work with Cal and all my other friends in the General Assembly to get things done. We want to make sure we put Cal right back in the seat that he's in, because he's doing great work for this part of the state. So I ask you in June of 26, I'm going to do everything I can to earn your vote, because it is going to be a great election. What we need to do is make sure we get people out to vote. Because one thing here in South Carolina that does disappoint me is we get less than 13% out to vote in the primaries. And that is a dismal number. So we have to work really hard, and I'm gonna really work hard to do a get out the vote movement so that we make sure in June we get everybody out to vote. We need to vote like our state depends on it, because it does. And we need to get out in record numbers, because our president needs all the help he can get. Because if we lose any seats in the House, if we lose any seats in the Senate, the last 2 years of his term will be riddled with Democrats trying to impeach him. And we won't get to see anything accomplished. So we really got to get a big get out the vote push here in our state and around the country. So with that, I want to open it up. If y'all have any questions you want to ask me directly, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm a representative, we live outside in the county, but not in Batesburg itself, and Bill Taylor, excellent person. Y'all just passed a great bill, hands-free on telephones for South Carolina, fantastic. When are you gonna come up with phone-free schools?
Well, so that is a good thing. For the last 2 years, last 2 budgets, we've had provisos that take cell phones out of kids' hands their entire school day.
That's good.
It is, because I'm telling you, I've been in our school. So reading is something that I'm very passionate about. For all of you moms out there, I was the book fair mom forever. I thought I would die being the book fair mom at my kids' school, that I was gonna inherit it long after they were gone. So reading has been something that I've been really passionate about. Because I believe if you can read, you can learn, and if you learn, you can be anything you want to be. But it all starts with that. And you go into schools, for a long time when I first became lieutenant governor, kids with earbuds in their ears, cell phones on their laps, you know they're not paying attention, right? And so them doing that, I'm telling you, if any of you have young kids at home, or young kids, grandchildren, you should read a book. I would almost consider getting the audio book, because it can get a little hard to read in spots, called The Anxious Generation. And this was put together by pediatricians, mental health counselors. They've been studying the statistics of what cell phones and social media have been doing to our kids. And it is horrifying. So read that book and see what is happening. The best thing we can do is get our kids back outside, get them hunting, get them fishing, get them in sports, get them hiking, but get those phones out of their hands. And I'll tell you, teachers have reported since we've done that, and I think Cal will concur, kids are getting, test scores are going up, they're talking to their peers more, which they were never doing, which is making them healthier. I have started, since I've been lieutenant governor, a youth workforce initiative, right? Because kids just aren't working anymore. I mean, as we're skilling everybody up, getting them certifications through the WIN scholarship, something the governor and I have pushed for a long time, and the General Assembly has concurred, we have been schooling everybody up, but leaving this void with our mom and pop businesses. And kids aren't filling that void. So I've been working with started a website for small businesses to post their jobs, kids to go find jobs. Because if we want to teach soft skills, if we want to teach fiscal responsibility, we need to do that by getting our kids working again. It's the best thing you can do for your young people to secure that they're going to have a prosperous future. And so, you know, that has moved the needle. Over 17,000 young people have come onto that site to look for jobs. And we need to continue to push that, because that's how we create the workforce of tomorrow. As your next governor, I want to make sure that every child that comes out of high school is either work ready, military ready, or college ready. And it's the work ready part we need to concentrate on, because that's where we lose our young people. Kids that don't have a vision for what they want to do, we lose them. But if we can get certification programs in our high schools to where these kids can have a pathway to a good paying job, it gets them hope and it gets them excited about thinking that maybe they would move on to a technical college or a four-year college, but at least they're locked in a path to a good paying job. And that's what I'd like to see happen come out of our schools.
I want to know, what can you do for property owners? I own 2 commercial buildings on this property and a couple of residences, and I don't know about y'all, but I am shocked and astounding of what property tax look like in our county. And I want to know statewide what kind of plan you would have as governor.
Well, that needs to be part of the bigger discussion with eliminating income tax, right? Because you can't just talk about one thing. You got to look at it collectively. And a lot of that has to be working in conjunction, because counties have a lot to do with that, right? So I think there are some strategic things that you see in other states where you have to have a good statewide plan. Imagine that, having a really good plan in place so that counties and the state can work together. And if you want to divert from that plan, well, then you're gonna have to find your own dollars to pay for it, right? But I think it's really important, you know, when we look at anybody that we elect, we should look at their resume and make sure that they have the resume to do the job. And that's why I think it's important when you look at who is gonna be the next CEO of your state, to make sure that they have had some experience in that, right? The same thing at every level. Make sure they have experience so they can look ahead. Because I believe if you're not looking ahead 10 years, then you're already looking in the rearview mirror. And that has to be the vision of elected officials at every level, whether it be the federal, the state, or the local level. Because as you're pointing out, more things affect you with your local level elected officials, a little less at the state, and even less at the federal side. But isn't it amazing that everybody knows what's going on at the federal level and who's all running for every office at the federal level? So it's my hope is that we start taking a real look at that, because I think Doge is something that has to be looked at every level too, to make sure what we're taxing people is really what we need to be taxing people.
But within the school system, I had no voice. I had no legal right, and I didn't have custody. So I couldn't make a decision for that child. Something needs to be done for the grandparents who are raising kids. We got a lot of them in this community. Grandparents have gotten kids just basically dropped off, and they've got to get them to school. Then my other one's about health care, so.
Okay. Well, for that one, that's something I've looked at, Director Leach, before he left DSS, I spent an entire day at DSS trying to talk about problems just like this, because you're not the first person who has said that. But it's it all revolves around kind of the legalities and the law, and who and what can be talked to, and who and what can make decisions. But my encouragement with DSS is we've got to find common sense solutions for typical problems that we're seeing across the state. And how do we change it? But that becomes like a much broader conversation that has to start in the General Assembly. With some common sense legislation that helps our grandparents who are stepping in to raise children.
It was a very frustrating time, and the school wouldn't even talk to me. They said, I can't talk to you. And her parent had kept her out of school for a whole year, and nobody checked up on her. It was a mess.
And see, that becomes the problem, when you talk about education, and this might shock most of you, do you know the biggest problem we deal with in education here in our state? It's truancy. How many kids aren't showing up in the classroom to be taught, right? And that is a huge issue, and teachers only have so many hours in the day. I mean, they are supposed to be calling and checking up, and they should be, or somebody should be. But then we're all shocked why we have these dismal test scores. If somebody doesn't show up to school for a whole year and then shows up in the classroom and now they put a test in front of them to take it, what's that gonna look like? For the district, for the state, right? We have got to, on the flip side of accountability, parents have got to be held accountable for their kids getting to school. I don't know, when I was young, I wanted to stay home with my mom and my grandma because my grandma lived with us and I thought they were doing way more fun things at home than I was doing at school. But my mom was really clear. If you don't go to school, I go to jail. So guess what? You're going to school. And it was really, there was no talking after that.
The one about healthcare is for nurse practitioners in the state. I know there's legislation out there to make it where we have some kind of internship program. I really want that pushed. I've begged for that for years. I'm old enough to be retired at this point. But we have kind of fought for having more open practice kind of rules for nurse practitioners because there are not enough doctors. And we're the feet on the ground. And pushing that bill through so that there is an internship type program or a residency kind of program, I really hope that happens.
So there's a couple good things that has gone on with that. During my time in office, we've increased the amount of nurse practitioners that can be tethered to a physician. So it used to be pretty small. There was only like 1 or 2, right, that a doctor could have on their license. And now I think they can have up to 5 or 6. So that has been, and we've increased the distance. So from the doctor's office to where those nurse practitioners are going. One other bright spot is in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, there is a lot of money that has been put out there for rural health care. So we find that this obviously is a big problem in our rural areas. And so the state, HHS will be getting, a big chunk of money over the next few years, coming up with a program to get more health care to rural areas. And there's been a lot that bigger, I guess, hospital systems have been trying to do. So like in rural areas towards Charleston, you see a lot of mobile units that go out with doctors on them, and they coordinate that between rural areas. But getting those rural healthcare dollars will actually spark some innovation and actually give funding to do that.
We're the only profession that I know I can have all the education and all the certifications, but I have to have a doctor sign my program as a collaborator before I can write a prescription.
Yeah.
And I've probably got more years of experience than those doctors at this state of the game. I mean, I was a 20-year nurse before I became a nurse practitioner, trained most of the ones that are there because I was at Richland Memorial where the residency programs were. But, you know, then I have to have them sign my paperwork before I can even sign as an NP. I don't know how you'd feel about it, but as a lawyer or as a bit, you want to have to have a partner before you can sign your name as your profession? I think that's just a little bit redundant.
I understand, and I think that's something that we'll be looking at again in the General Assembly this year. But we have made progress. I think the one big beautiful bill, that funding coming in, will help advance even more.
Gilbert. I have a question. What is your message to the veterans and their families that live in the state of South Carolina?
Wow, so very proud to be the Lieutenant Governor because I think we're the most veteran-friendly state in the country, and I might be a little biased on that, but we have done a lot. During our time, it was the governor and I during our administration that opened the Department of Veterans Affairs. And a lot of that came through the guidance of Major General Livingston, our Medal of Honor recipient. I'm proud to have his endorsement. He did a lot educating us as a state on what resources that brings to our state for our veterans. We've also signed a memorandum of agreement with the Army. So we want to do, the governor and I would love every veteran who's hanging up their uniform to come to South Carolina and make it their home. So we've done a couple key things. We signed an MOU, as I was saying, with the Army, so that when you leave service, we'll guarantee you 5 interviews within our government to see if we can fit your skill set. We also took away the restrictions for using your GI Bills. You see, in South Carolina, it used to be a restriction. You had to be a resident for 3 years to get in-state tuition. But now if you're leaving the military, we allow that to be waived so that you can start career paths right here. And we have also, during our time, cut your veterans' pensions to 0. We eliminated state income tax on them. So once again, try to say, we appreciate you, we want you here, because they make the best workforce coming out of the military. They're proven, they're reliable, they're trained. So if they could go anywhere in the country, we want them right here. And so we'll continue to do that. Working really hard with the federal government, Director Hegseth, working a lot on trying to get better medical coverage for our veterans, right? I think President Trump did a great job his first term in office, that if you couldn't be seen at a VA hospital, you could then go and be seen anywhere by any physician so that you can get treated. I think we're gonna see more and more of that rolling out of DC. And a lot of that on the veteran side, we have to take from them as they're doing it. So, but we'll continue to work. I think that's the big positive about having a direct line with the Trump administration.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you about insurance, health insurance for one. We have so many people who are falling in the gap between making too much money for any kind of medical help, but not making enough, or they're close to retirement, like I am, with pre-existing conditions, and there's no insurance available that anyone wants to sell you unless it's in the $1,000 range per month, and it's extremely high. And then we have insurance issues. Someone here and I were talking earlier. You can't get insurance on an old house. If it's got plaster in it, they don't want to touch you. Insurance companies are just dropping people that they've had in their businesses for years. So insurance in South Carolina has gotten to be almost a battle to even get insurance. If you can get it, it's an issue. So there's a lot of insurance regulations. What are we looking at doing with that?
So I think those are all great questions, and we've been dealing with them at the state level, especially this year with tort reform, right? When I first became lieutenant governor, I remember I was talking to the Trucking Association, and I was talking about how we needed to revamp some things to get more competition into our market so we can keep our rates stable or actually bring them down, right? And I remember somebody walking up to me after and they said, whew, if you're talking about tort reform, you better put on a bulletproof vest because nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But look what happened this year, right? The General Assembly heard, the governor and I encouraged both sides of the aisle, the House and the Senate, to do the right thing. put some laws on the books that make it more inviting for insurance companies to come into our state. Because let's face it, if we can't get competition in here, rates are gonna skyrocket. And I know that from the business side, and I dealt with it firsthand dealing with workers' comp insurance, but it's the same with all levels of insurance. What I wanna tell people is medical is a really hard thing when it comes to that. And it is hard for people that fall within the gap of where you can go to on the exchange and what, we have offering in the private sector and what businesses can do. But what I'm very passionate about, because I've seen it at the ground level, is the free clinics we have all around our state. And these are not just for uninsured, they're for underinsured too, or people that are falling in the gap. And these are the same doctors that see you at your local hospital. These are the same doctors that if you had great private insurance you could go to, they volunteer their time. The one in Greenville, they have a neurologist. I sit on the board of St. Francis. We can't find a neurologist to put on staff, but they have one that volunteers their time at the free clinic. They do dental, they do eye, they do medical, they have their own pharmacy there, and most of that's covered by grant dollars from the federal government. And I think it's a real shame that people don't realize that these free clinics are all over the state. And again, they're not just for uninsured, they're for underinsured too. And phenomenal facilities. So I encourage everybody that if you fall within that gap, look at some of those resources, which...
How would people find them?
Exactly. And that's why I talk about it when I talk, and so it's a great question. Go online to South Carolina Free Clinics and you'll see there is one in almost every county. I mean, great facilities, and I've been in most of them, and what I've tried to do as Lieutenant Governor, if I go to a place that I know has a free clinic close by, I try to stop in there and say hello and thank them, because normally the media will follow me where I'm going, and then that way people can see what's right in their backyard that they may not even know exists.
Would the state let municipalities know that these are in their area, so municipalities can put it on their website so more people can find out? So this is communication.
Yeah, they should, but again, I don't know I can't say that every local, county is attaching to those things, but I encourage you to go out there and look at that. And I try to encourage everybody to say, hey, we have these resources, so please go there and look.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, so, and like I said, the house insurance and other things, it's just very difficult.
And
Insurance is difficult in our state.
And a lot of
It really is.
times, our Department of Insurance, if you have a carrier who you think is not treating you fairly, you can call there. They have a consumer advocate division that if they think something isn't going right, they will fight for you at no cost to you. So again, government has a lot of resources. Unfortunately, not everybody knows where to go and find them. So, but if you ever feel like you've been treated unfairly in that space, please call. They have a whole group of people, and I'll tell you, I've used them. When I was about to get some coverage dropped on my house at the coast, and then I wasn't being treated fairly, and they corrected the situation.